just yet. The steam engines carried by both ships, which powered their revolutionary brass propellers, could only produce 25 horsepower at 4 knots. This was only a tenth of the power of icebreakers less than half their size had at the time. This feature wasn't a mystery, however, as the Admiralty had only included 12 days worth of fuel for the steam engines, which would have been much better used for heat than propulsion. It's likely that these were seen as more of a psychological benefit to the crew and to the British public, and were only of very limited use. As a result, the expedition would only travel around 800 kilometers, navigating around Cornwallis Island, before circling back to Beechey Island by the first winter freeze. This put them only around 350 kilometers from Baffin Bay where they began, but all things considered, this was actually decent progress. Throughout the winter, both ships sheltered in a cove between Beechey Island and the much larger Devon Island to avoid the churning sheets of ice that piled on top of one another in the high wind. Once the Erebus and Terror were frozen in sea ice, the crew gathered snow high enough to pack against the sides of both ships as insulation. Up top, the sails were taken down and a massive canvas tent covered most of the vessel's deck space. This would have given the crew slightly more space to move around in without being fully exposed to the elements. Over the winter of 1845 and into 1846, 3 members of the crew were buried on Beechey Island. Pneumonia is believed to be the final cause of death, but also not the only cause. By then, the second nail in the expedition's coffin was slowly being revealed, and unfortunately, it was one they'd been eating and drinking for months. The 16,000 cans of food that they brought on the expedition with them had been a rush job from the lowest bidder. Improper lead soldering had left traces inside the cans described like trails of wax down a candle, and many of the cans weren't even properly cooked or fully sealed